Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Battle of BC 6 crew battle. If you don't know, Battle of BC is happening at the end of March, and as per usual, they're going to have an NA versus World crew battle, and the people on Team NA are going to be Spargo, Light, MK Leo, Zomba, Skyjake, Kurama, Ouch, and Big D, and on Team World, you got Yoshidora, Gluttony, Raflo, Ryuo, Lugi, Ron, and Dora Migi, and we have 2 players that we have to vote into both teams. Originally, we had a list of 10. We are down to just 5 for both of these teams. You're going to have Terracatori, Toruguri, Eric B, Hert, and Shuton being on Team World, and AllanD, WebJP, Armadillo, Peanut, and Omega being voted in for Team NA. And in today's video, we're going to be going over which of these players you should be voting for. And we're going to be bringing back the trusty Google slide for this video, talking about the worst and best matchups of these respective players. And at the end of the video, I'm going to be picking my 2 players that I think would be the best choice for the crew battle, as well as the 2 players that I just kind of want to see there. And our first one is going to be Armadillo. His best matchup is probably going to be versus Bloom Forever, just because Bayo struggles pretty hard versus Lucario. The big thing about Bayonetta is sometimes she kills you at 40%, but when she's not killing you at 40, she's probably killing you at 160, 170. I've been seeing people live till 200 pretty frequently versus that character, and Lucario loves that kind of stuff. It is just such a struggle. Even if he is dying super early for 2 of his stocks, you get that 1 stock where you just get max rage, and you have max rage for so long, or max aura, I should say, and it's just a massive struggle for Bayo, so I imagine Armadillo will do fairly well versus Bloom, and his worst matchup is very likely going to be versus Gluttony, because sometimes you are just dying at 40% to a Waft confirm, and Wario in general is fairly good at getting the stock, but as I mentioned, the Waft is definitely going to be a massive problem, because you're just null-negating a stock, and you're null-negating all of the Oreo that Lucario would have on that stock, so it's just not fun for the character. Our next player is going to be Omega. I think his best head-to-head would likely be up versus Luigi. Luigi just has a really difficult time dealing with Joker's neutral. Gun specifically is an absolute nightmare for the character, and you don't really have any space making for Luigi to actually get in versus Joker, and once you do get in versus Joker, he's going to have disjoints that are really difficult for Luigi to deal with, because they're not the biggest disjoints in the world, but when you're hitting with your face, like Luigi often is, it could just be a massive struggle, and yes, once you get in, you are going to get a lot of damage, but that's Luigi in every single matchup, and the off-stage gameplay is also really bad, especially when Joker has Arset, because then you're going to have access to Tetrakarn, which is arguably the best counter in the entire game, and is going to kill Luigi every single time he goes off stage, as well as that just massive back air, and it's really difficult for Luigi to actually capitalize on the Arset recovery, as most characters do. That's kind of where you make your money. Luigi isn't super great at doing that. It's not impossible by any means, but I do think the matchup is a pretty big struggle, and then the worst matchup is likely going to be Ryuo. As I mentioned, Luigi can't in versus Gun, or can't get in versus Gun, rather. Diddy Kong definitely can. Monkey Flip makes this matchup incredibly difficult, and a lot of the Diddy Kong's tools just make it super hard for Joker to play his neutral. Banana specifically can't just really be pulling out the gun, because if you shoot the gun while Diddy Kong pulls out the banana, you're getting hit by that, and you are going on an absolute ride. I mean, you look at the highest level of play in Smash Ultimate, Tweak and MK Leo, and you can see that this matchup is just a struggle. Our next player is going to be WebJP, and his best matchup is probably going to be up against Dora Migi. There are 2 things about Min Min that are really good. One's going to be her walling, and the second one is going to be her edge guarding, and Sheik does extremely well versus both of those aspects. Sheik is probably one of Min Min's worst matchups. She's just so easily able to get into Min Min's zone, and once she does break Min Min's zone, it's very hard to actually get her out because of how good her frame rate is and how amazing her advantage state is, and when you add how bad Min Min's disadvantage state is, it is just not a fun time, and the offstage gameplay is also very bad for Min Min. It's always bad, but especially in this matchup because of how good Sheik is at edge guarding the character, and when it comes to edge guarding Sheik, it's a lot more difficult for Min Min because she can just go so low with Bouncing Fish and get right onto the ledge and then just up to the ledge, and you are going to have the opportunity for a 2-frame there, but every single character in the game can 2-frame. That's nothing special, and overall Sheik just has a lot of fun versus Min Min, and the worst matchup is probably going to be Ron or Yoshidora. It doesn't really matter which one, because Yoshi is ultimately going to be the problem. That double jump is just such a nightmare for Sheik. You're able to escape a lot of her combos, or so-called combos. Obviously, those ones aren't going to be fully true, and if Sheik isn't getting the maximum usage out of her combos, you're not taking a ton of damage, to be honest, and I would favor Yoshi in the killing. He just has moves that he can throw out, like back air, like up air, like nair, that are just going to start killing Sheik. She is an extremely light character, where Sheik has to land her precise kill confirms, and both in the neutral and the advantage state, I think Yoshi wins slightly. And I should clarify, I think Yoshi wins in those aspects because he's hitting so much harder and his hits are so much more threatening, not because he actually has a better neutral than Sheik. Our next player is going to be AllanD, and his best matchup is likely going to be up against Ryuo. Diddy Kong does not have a lot of fun versus Snake. The grenade just makes the matchup super difficult for the character. All the creativity that you can normally have with Diddy, you really can't have versus Snake because he's just going to hit that grenade button and you're both going to explode. Snake is heavily favored in the killing like he is in most matchups, and one of the really good things about this matchup that I feel like people often don't highlight is going to be how much worse Diddy Kong's recovery gets, because Diddy has a very good recovery. Barrels are super difficult to deal with because he can do them from so far away and just sit on them for so long that it's just super tough to catch the timing. Nikita, on the other hand, doesn't really care about that. You can go strictly for the Diddy Kong player. You could just wait till he has to go to the ledge because he's going to have to eventually, and it is no risk to the Snake player. It is not fun at all at the top level, and I should also mention that crouch is very good in this matchup because you can just crouch under monkey flip and then get whatever punish you want. And the worst matchup is going to be easily Dormigi. I think Min Min is easily Snake's worst matchup. The disadvantage state and the advantage state rather for Min Min is just so bad. You're dying off stage pretty much every single time. Neutral is almost impossible to play with because Min Min is just going to be throwing out her arms from halfway across the stage, blowing up your grenades. It is just not a lot of fun, and as a Snake player, I don't want to talk about it anymore. And our final player from Team NA, as well as our first player from Team World, is going to be Peanut and Torri. And the reason I'm putting them together is going to be because they're both on the Little Mac, and my analysis isn't going to be very good because they're both on the Little Mac. They shouldn't really have any best matchups for Peanut. I would guess it would be up versus Glutony because Wario, every single move that he has, aside from the bike, is him fighting with his face. And honestly, I think Little Mac would actually make a lot of very good usage out of the bike, and I think Peanut could have success in that matchup, but he wouldn't be really favored in that matchup. And for Torri, it is going to be the exact same thing. Fox is going to be fighting with his face, and Fox is also extremely light. If you manage to two-frame that character, he's going to die at like 60%, but also, it's Fox versus Little Mac. It's still not a matchup where Little Mac is going to be heavily favored, and the worst matchups, basically, Torri and Peanut should be losing every single matchup. They have a chance versus pretty much every player here, though, because of how talented they are, but realistically, they shouldn't be favored. Our next player is going to be Hert. His best matchup is going to be up versus Big D. Snake Ice Climbers is a terrible matchup for Ice Climbers, and we have seen Big D have success with it in the past. Like, notably, he managed to beat Apollo Kage at main stage, but I imagine that Hert is going to have a lot more experience versus Ice Climbers just because the character is relatively common in Japan. At least to the rest of the world, there's going to be a lot more Ice Beast players, and even if you aren't super fond of the matchup or don't know it super well, it's still Snake Ice Climbers. Grenade nullifies that character, and it's so easy to kill Nana, like it's not even funny. And the worst matchup is going to be up versus Light. I'm saying Light because they played before at port priority, and it was a very competitive set, but Light did end up taking it. And to be honest, Hert doesn't have any super hard counters on the NA team. I think Zombo would do well versus him. I think Spargo would do well versus him. I think Leo would do well versus him, but to the extent of doing significantly better than Light, no. And since Light has proven that he can beat Hert before, I'm going to say that's the worst matchup, but to be honest, Hert isn't countered super hard by anybody. Next up is going to be Shon, and he's a little bit different than everyone else in this video because everyone else in the video hasn't really played against any of the opponents on the opposite team, whereas Shon has played against like everyone on the opposite team. So instead of using character head-to-heads, we get to use player head-to-heads, and based off the player head-to-heads, his best matchup should be up versus MKLeo. He is 3-0 on MKLeo, and I believe it's 9-0 on games as well, so he has pretty much destroyed Leo, the best record against him in the entire world. But based off recent performances, Leo has looked a lot better with the Joker, and I don't think Olimar or Aegis specifically destroy Joker. I don't think they're terrible matchups either, but it's not as convincing as the head-to-head should seem, or I don't think it will be at least, but you'd still expect Shon to win it. And for his worst matchup, is going to be a similar situation. Kurama is up 3-1 versus Shon, winning their last 3 encounters, and I don't think Aegis or Olimar are super bad versus Mario. In fact, I think Aegis beats Mario, but it just seems like Kurama has been really good in that matchup. So we're not really looking at the character head-to-heads here. We're more looking at the player head-to-heads, and based off the numbers, these should be the matchups where Shon is struggling and doing well in. Our next player is going to be Eric B, and sorry that I couldn't find you a more flattering photo, but that's all I got. His best matchup is going to be up versus Light. Ice Climbers has a field day with Fox. That character is hitting with his face, and Ice Climbers love when you hit with the face, and the amount of damage that Ices do, it really leads to the point where Fox is getting hit once or twice and his stock is just exploding. We've all seen Big D versus Light. It is arguably Fox's worst matchup, and I imagine that Eric D would have an absolute field day, and his worst matchup is going to be up versus Spargo. I think both Cloud and Aegis do really well versus Ice Climbers, but Aegis really does well versus Ice Climbers. Like, I gotta drive that point home. Pyra side B, pretty much just nullifies the character. If you ever see Shon play versus an Ice Climber player, that is literally all he will do because it is just such a broken move in that one very specific matchup. And then obviously you're going to have these massive Jix joints. You're very easily able to desync the Ice Climber players and actually get the Gimp on Nana. And overall, the matchup is just not fun versus the Massive Sword. And our final player is going to be Torri. His best matchup is probably going to be versus Zomba. It's another one of those situations where Banjo, the character, isn't going to be doing super well versus really anyone on the opposite team, aside from Ice Climbers. I do think Banjo does decent there, so maybe you could put Big D as his best matchup, but also Torri has beaten Zomba in their only encounter, and I imagine that Zomba doesn't want to lose if they do have the run back, so he's been at least practicing the Banjo matchup, but you're not going to get the experience that is at the level of Torri unless you're playing like Tweak, for example, but even that isn't going to be quite Torri's level, so I don't know if he's necessarily going to be ready for the run back, whereas Torri, he's not going to be able to practice the Robs that are as good as Zomba, but you're at least going to be able to practice against a lot more Rob players, be a lot more aware of the matchup, and his worst matchup is going to be versus MKLeo. I just think Joker does really well versus Banjo. The character is not super good in that matchup, and it's another situation. There's a lot of choices you can put here because Banjo kind of just sucks, but MKLeo is the one I chose. So now that we've gone over all 10 players, we got to talk about the ones that would be the best in the crew battle. And for Team World, it is a lot easier because they are going to have access to 2 players who are arguably top 10 in Shon and Hert. So they would definitely be my picks. And for Team NA, it's a little bit more tricky. My first pick is going to be AllanD. His only hard counter is going to be Doramigi with the Min matchup. But every other matchup, I think he definitely has a chance in. And he's also just one of the most underrated players in the entire world. I think AllanD is extremely good. And this would be a great opportunity to show how talented he is. And the other decision was really difficult for me to make, but I ultimately went with WebJP. This guy is just such an incredible player. His conversions and kill confirms are so unreal that even in some of these bad matches, I think he's going to find ways to secure the stock and get that really early damage, which is super important in a crew battle. So my choices for Team NA are going to be WebJP and AllanD, and my choices for Team World are going to be Shon and Hert. And before we wrap it up, I want to put a little bit of personal bias in there, talk about the players that I personally just want to see. And for Team NA, it is easily going to be AllanD as my #1 pick. I want to see the guy traveling because he is so talented. I think this could be an amazing opportunity for him. And the other one is going to be WebJP. So pretty much is the players that I picked as the best option. Same exact situation. He's got a little bit more experience and a little bit more opportunities to travel, but I still think he has a lot of untapped potential. And I believe they're actually going to be flying out 3 players just because they needed extra. So I hope Omega can go as well for the exact same reasons that I mentioned for WebJP and AllanD. Is a very talented player, and the more opportunities that he gets to travel, the better he is going to get. And for Team World, these choices were very easy for me to make. You have Hert, who is arguably my favorite player, and Torri, who is also arguably my favorite player, so they are both definitely going to be going on that list. And I would also like to see Eric B have the opportunity to travel. He is from a lesser represented region, so it would be sick to see him play against some of the best Smash has to offer. And with that, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoy. We're going to be doing a video for the full Battle of BC crew battle when it gets a little bit closer to the date. So if you enjoyed this video, it's going to be a similar style. Be sure to sub so you can catch that video when it drops. And with that, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. The sport has been absolutely unreal as of late, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.